630 CHED presents The Announcers. Opinion, personality, passion. The Announcers on 630 CHED, Edmonton's breaking news and conversation station.
Good morning, Ryan Jespersen here, joined by Andrew Grose, Jalen Nye. Guys, you're allowed to say something.
I waved. We don't want to talk. Okay.
Are you, Albertans are going to be heading to the polls. Canadians are heading to the polls. People right here in Edmonton, I know, by the hundreds of thousands will be heading to the polls. And those of us that have been covering the Election 42 campaign over the last 11 weeks, I think in all honesty, probably just can't wait for it to be done. Are you feeling the same way?
I am exhausted. I have nothing left in me when it comes to this campaign, and not just the length. And the length, of course, was it the longest in Canadian history?
It was.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Beyond that, and that by itself would be a reason to be exhausted, I am exhausted by the attack ads, by the misinformation. I feel like a volunteer firefighter. Every time I hear something, I've got to run and then determine it was a false alarm. We're sending jackets to ISIS. Oh my God! Oh wait, no, we're not doing that at all. Oh, my kids are going to be 20 before they get daycare. Oh no, wait a minute. Turns out that's not true. There's just, my gosh, you know what? Where I would encourage people to do their due diligence and research, I would encourage people to stop. You know everything you need to know now. Just go vote.
I am completely done. I think come Monday evening at about 11 o'clock, I'm going to head home, have a glass of wine, and pray to the election gods. Thank you. This is over. I am so fed up. And hey, I like a great debate, and I love seeing great debates between people, sometimes on social media. I am sick of the hatred, seemingly the hatred, the negativity, the claws that are out on my Facebook feed, on my Twitter feed, going out for dinner with people. I am done. Just done. I just want things to be peaceful again a little bit.
I thought I was going to be the cranky one. All right,
I'm just...
But I feel like some relationships are not ever going to be the same. I mean, people are talking about how they've unfollowed people on Twitter and they've unfriended people on Facebook. And I mean, back in the day, you knew, and I was always fascinated by the neighborhood dynamics. You know, someone would have a liberal sign and then their next door neighbor would have a conservative sign. And
bigger one.
The bigger one. And then they keep getting, and then someone's sign gets stolen and then the big NDP sign goes up down the street, and then you think these people have to get along after the election. And you wondered back in the day, the ancient days of the 70s, 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, before there was social media, if people ever actually recovered when it came time to restore neighborly relations after a hard-fought election campaign. Yeah, but it feels like there's more vitriol this time.
Yeah, that's an interesting point for sure, because back in the day, and I can remember because I'm the oldest one here, you held the election. It was a shorter campaign, of course. You held the election, and then you lived with the results. But now we don't live with the results anymore. People who didn't even vote go on the next day on social media. It continues on, and their memories are really long. They last 4 or 5 years till the next election, because you have situations like, well, I just bought a new car. Hey, really, what kind of car did you buy? The kind you can't buy with an NDP government. Like, oh, my God, you know what I mean? Like, let it go already.
Yeah, it's old. You talk about unfriending friends. I went through my Facebook page the other day and I unfriended 200 people.
200?
200 people. But a number of the people who are still very vocal.
I'm just going to check my Facebook.
No, we're still friends.
We're still buddies.
No, we're all good. But some of the people who are very vocal in this election, and I appreciate people who have an opinion. I appreciate people who do some research, who have their thoughts well planned out, who have their statements, their beliefs well planned out, whether it's right or wrong. You figure it out. The campaign, I have seen people targeting others, saying, you know what, you're just campaigning for this person, but then they turn around and do the exact same thing. And it's just this almost like two-faced thing, the high school attacks.
I mean, I guess on one hand, you celebrate the fact that people are engaged, that people are passionate, that they've informed themselves, at least to a certain degree. And I mean, we could have a whole separate conversation on sources of information and how people have informed themselves. But the fact of the matter is, I hate to crack down on people who care and people who are passionate, but it gets to a point where it's so divisive because you care so much about a single issue. For example, you feel that one party leader is especially strong on protecting Canada's waterways. You feel like another leader falls short. And if someone you know supports that leader, then all of a sudden your friend or your acquaintance doesn't care about Canada's waterways.
Yes.
And maybe you need to learn a little bit more about the little ducklings that are dying and how can you be such a callous
You
jerk?
need to know more about what I care about so that we can argue with one another. I don't care to argue with you. I care to go cast my vote. I'd like to go back to those days. You remember that?
Oh, come on, you like arguing.
No, I don't,
Yes, you do.
honestly. Well, I guess to
I
a point
love
I do.
debating.
Sure.
And I hate
An informed
arguing.
debate is okay.
Sure.
You know.
And a respectful debate. Respectful, not the claws out name calling crap that I've been seeing all over the place and I've been hearing it. Respectful. You can have a differing opinion and still be respectful, and I think that has been lost this go around. It's mind blowing to me.
Yeah, I hate to, but I'm going to do it anyway, take some election issues and essentially just totally dismiss them and bring up a few others that I'm surprised no one's really been talking about. But we know, say, for example, when it comes to child care, a national child care program, there are very real elements of this debate that have been lacking, both on the national scene as well as, I think, interpersonally, even people I know, discussions I've had with my friends. Nobody's talking about what about families that want to leave one parent at home to parent? What are governments going to do for them? What are party platforms going to do to appeal to them to gain their vote? What about something like, income splitting? What does that really mean for seniors, for example? How are we better supporting our seniors? These are legitimate issues. With all due respect, when it comes to whether or not a woman can wear a niqab while taking the oath of Canadian citizenship, or whether a Canadian government employee, a federal employee, can wear the niqab at work, really, and I do understand that I leave myself open to criticism here because sometimes a story is indicative of a bigger issue. But really, this is an issue that affects far less than 1% of Canadians. Yet, the venom that has been evident, and for that matter, what I'm getting at here, the racism that has been rampant, and then this sort of dismission, the people's dismissive reaction and response to that racism, to me, has made this 11-week campaign period nothing more than former friends trading punches on Facebook. And to me, that's what's, I think, prompting me to just wish this whole thing to be done.
And isn't it interesting in the three issues that you brought up, and again, it's all perspective. The first that you brought up was daycare. Well, my kids are in university. And while I want to have a country that takes care of its children, is daycare a priority for me? No. And that's just being honest. I'm past that.
100%.
Right, so I don't need that. And the niqab, I don't want to say I don't care. I care about the awful, ugly racism and racist comments that came out of that. But personally, do I care if it's worn or not worn? No, I honestly don't. And I've forgotten what your second one, income splitting. I could use income splitting.
And I'm just
splitting.
pulling these out of the air. But I mean, Andrew, for that matter, you have kids that are going into post-secondary. I mean, if you had a 20-year-old voter that's in university or college or trade school right now that said, I would like to have a very clear idea of what the three main political parties or the others would do for me as a student that's investing in my education, would you be able to give them an informed answer, despite the fact?
On daycare, did you say?
No, on tuition, on helping out 20-year-olds that are going to post-secondary education. I mean, where's the discussion on that? We have obsessed on these tiny, small, stupid, trivial issues. And again, I'm opening myself up, all of a sudden Jespersen says that someone's cultural rights are stupid. No, I'm just saying people are going to be determining their vote. It comes along once every 5 years in Canada on something that really has zero impact on their daily life.
Whose fault is that, do you think? I'm curious to know.
It's our fault.
Is it the media's fault for focusing on that issue, let's say? And I throw it out there because we were getting, this week getting blamed saying, hey, you know what? That we control the message, and all of that.
We can only feed on the food that we're given.
That's right.
And I'll tell you what, the big elephant in the room for me, and when we talk about apathy, and I say I'm not apathetic about this election. I'm angry about this election because despite the length of it, the attack ads, and everything else that we've talked about, the awful racism that's come out of it, the ugly comments between neighbors, I'm angry because I think the elephant in the room is I still haven't heard what I want to hear. I still feel like we're putting a coat of paint on an old car and hoping that the engine runs better. Every time, and I made a list, and if you'll permit me for just a second.
Please.
I want you to think of the country now as my house instead. And I've decided as a family that I'd like to go on vacation. If I'm a politician, what do? I collect more money from everyone in the house in order to pay for the vacation. Or I cut back on food and clothing and redirect the money to the trip. Or I borrow from a bank and I go into debt to go on a trip. Or I get rid of one of my kids to reduce the cost of the trip. Or I just don't take one of my kids. Or I go to a corporation that I work for and say, you know what, I deserve a trip. Why don't you pay for it? None of those things would be a practical solution to a household. But in a country, it is. Everyone seems to be talking about we're going to cut services or we're going to go into debt to add services or, hey, how about we make it more efficient? Has anybody talked about that? Is there any way? Because you know what? In my house, if I want to go on vacation, I have to look at my budget and say, what am I prepared to be a little smarter with in my expenditures in order to be able to afford a vacation? And I solve the problem. And I don't hear anybody talking about that. Everybody's criticizing the other party for, well, they want to cut services. Well, I don't want that. Well, they want to increase debt. Well, I don't want that. You know what I want? Take a look within and tell me how you can provide the services you already provide, but do it in a more efficient manner. That's what I want to hear.
Boom. Mic drop. Gross out.
Gross out. Yeah, the way I look at it is you have three approaches to that, Andrew. One of them is that if your family wants to go on vacation, then your family will find a way and make the proper sacrifices to pay for that vacation. Another approach is that we're going to ask those that are going on the really fancy vacations to go a little less fancy.
Sure.
So that everybody can go on vacation.
Sure. Sure. If you can afford a great vacation, shouldn't you be throwing me some cash to go on a mediocre vacation?
But maybe what's lacking is just really quality metaphors like this.
Yeah, exactly.
It might help people better understand political policy. I'd never want to complain about the fact, and I'll return to this, that we said right off the top of the show that people are passionate. Mm-hmm. To me, it's just really tough. I mean, it's like imagine if once every 5 years we were to openly debate religion. No one would want to go there. Mm-hmm. Well, some people would. I mean, the gluttons for punishment would, and the seriously convicted would, right? But for the most part, it would be, I think we can acknowledge, an unhealthy exercise. Mm-hmm. When you put it to a democratic poll on who has the best religion, and we were, and that's quite literally what this is. I mean, for a lot of people, politics is more serious than religion, and that's what we put ourselves through. So maybe it's no surprise that it gets nasty.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. And the other thing I really am tired of, may I?
Go ahead.
I'm tired of, and maybe this is our fault. Maybe this is our fault as citizens, that politicians feel that we're so stupid that they have to dummy it down for us to understand. But if you look at any of the parties, any of them, and they come up with a policy that's going to spur economic growth or it's going to reduce unemployment, or how can you possibly have a single policy to solve such a complex problem as world oil prices, for example? And they dummy it down, and it frustrates me that they dummy it down because people sit there and chew on this dummied information. The example I'd use is, you know what would help a business? Put a neon open sign out front. That would help a business, right? Because then everyone would know it was open. And certainly that would help a bar. Wait a second, would that help an airplane manufacturer? No, probably not. Probably wouldn't result in anything. I'm tired of these general policies to complex issues. And then on the other side of it, the opposition parties or the other parties saying, well, that's not going to work for this reason. None of these guys know what's going to work. If any of them knew what was going to work, it would already be working. And it's not.
But don't you think that there needs, obviously you don't, the dumbing down. I think that we do need to have some of the dumbing down because a lot of us can't wrap our heads around it. Plain and simple. You can't understand it. We're not in those roles. Those aren't our jobs. That is not what we do for a living. You need to sometimes be spoon-fed. You don't necessarily need to take it verbatim and say, okay, this is the belief, this is the belief. It goes back to doing more research. But I do believe that you have to make it easy to understand.
It's like watching The Bachelor or The Bachelorette.
Wow, I can't wait to see how this ends.
Right?
I'm with you.
Because essentially what it is there's this specified period of time. And for Canadians, it was an 11-week campaign. For The Bachelor, The Bachelorette, and the hopefuls, it's the time in the mansion. And they have all of these elaborate dates and these fabulous experiences.
Great
and
dresses.
You seem to know a lot about this.
He watches it.
Hey, pal. I hosted a TV show on a network that hosted The Bachelor for 9 years. We've done our fair share of talking about it. But people are there and they're not eating because they want to keep the six-pack. And they're drinking a lot because they want to grease the wheels. And they're wearing their 4 best outfits. And they're appealing to the one handing out the roses to please choose me. Life moving forward with me looks better than with the other guy. Now, fast forward 3 months into the mandate, if you will. I don't mean date with a man.
I was going to say mandate or
the political mandate.
That's a different
Let's
show.
say fast forward 3 months into reality.
Right.
And what you have is someone going number 2 in the bathroom with the door open, someone's dirty laundry on the floor, somebody snoring through the night, pizza boxes, the financial reality that we're in debt. What are we going to do?
Yeah.
And the real life stuff hits.
Right.
And all of a sudden that experience in that period of time, all those promises seem somewhat meaningless. You've forgotten most of the pledges that were made.
Right.
The campaign period is surreal. It is above and beyond what we can expect in practical, tangible terms from whoever achieves government. So we have to take everything that we're hearing and seeing with a grain of salt. It's not real life.
Right. That's absolutely right.
They're just throwing everything at you to try and catch your attention, right?
And there's exactly right.
It's like a courtship.
Yeah, and there's this expectation that if we put a new driver behind the car, it's going to be a much better car. It's the same car. That's the thing. There's this expectation that if we change governments now, that we're going to rid ourselves of everybody that was in government, and we're not. That machine is still there with a new leader at the top, and it takes a long time to transition that into the things that they promised. So now those promises become what politicians like to call talking points. No, not policy, talking points. I mean, that's a vision that we had, and we're going to try our best. I challenge you to... If time travel were possible and you could just jump from decade to decade and stand in a field and say, who's governing this province or who's governing this country, you wouldn't be able to tell. The change is not real. The change is so subtle.
Well, my pay stubs changed a little bit in the last little while since May. Yours probably has too. I don't know if you noticed or not. A lot of people don't necessarily study their pay stubs to the cent. Mine's changed a little bit, and depending on what happens on October 19th, on this coming Monday, pay stub could change again. Mm-hmm. So that's something that changes. There's about 40,000 Albertans, depending on who you believe and what numbers you look at, that are out of work right now.
Sure.
Now, global oil prices, Andrew, have a great degree to do with that, like you said.
That's just it. There's so many extraneous factors that government, no matter which government, is not unable to control. So they do the best they can.
But an infusion of infrastructure dollars, let's say, that would reflect one party's promise, the
Sure.
Liberals in particular, to run deficits, to plug money back into the economy, that might actually change someone's landscape. But you're right. Generally speaking, the odd guy that's just putting a shovel into the ground on a
Exactly.
Tuesday morning, probably not going to notice a huge change.
Right. And the day after the election, we can look at the deficit, and it'll probably be to the penny what it was the day before the election. It's not like when a party promises that we're going to do this, this, and this, that they're going to do it, as soon as we put the cap on the last champagne bottle at the campaign headquarters, we'll get on that tomorrow morning, and it should be worked out by 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It takes so much time that you don't seem to notice the change. And then that's where the anger comes from, I think, and the frustration that, well, what's the point of these elections if nothing major seems to change? And I'm not saying that it doesn't, and you've pointed a couple that do. I'm just saying that that's for a guy putting a shovel in the ground, for a guy just going to work 40 or 60 or whatever hours a week, he doesn't see a whole lot of change.
I think it goes back to what Ryan said. We start taking a closer look at your pay stub and that sort of thing. That is one of the realities of this election that I've been wondering about. What the different taxation levels, all of that. How is that going to impact me? I mean, as you mentioned earlier, the national daycare thing doesn't have any impact on me. It's the basic things. How much money can I put into a TFSA? How much money or less money am I going to be bringing home? Those for me are the really, really big ones. There's a few other ones, but it's more direct, my personal little world, my family,
right.
and how that's going to shake all out.
But see, that's my whole thing. I'm sorry, Ryan, but where we say, well, you know what, be informed. Take a look at the platforms of the various parties and see which ones align best with your views and values, right? Not all of them are going to align 100%. So you take, if you want the negative view, the lesser of the 3 or 4 evils, and you say, okay, well, this one best aligns. That's only step one. That doesn't mean that party can deliver on any of that. And that's what's frustrating. So, okay, so I best align with, and to be honest with you, I took one of those quizzes online to see who I best aligned with. I was shocked.
Well, hang on a second. I mean, we could do a whole show on those.
Definitely.
You have to look who's putting those quizzes out.
Yes, exactly.
You know that a lot of people aren't stupid.
Right,
these people that tell you to go online and do this poll and it'll tell you who to vote for.
Sure.
And no matter what you do, it's going to tell you to vote Liberal, as an example. I'm picking a party out of thin air.
Mine was Green.
Yeah, that website may have been sponsored by the Green Party.
Well, some of the
Canada.
questions were sort of dubious. Do you want to end oil exploration or would you rather kill puppies? I'm like, okay, well.
Yeah. But let me also point out that when I suggest to you that one tangible impact that an election can have, in this instance provincial and coming up after Monday night federal, would be that your pay stub can change. I'm not complaining about that, because that's just one factor. Sure, the pay stub may change, but we may have preserved or introduced or implemented social programs as a result. I may look and say, you know what, I can pay a little more, or these people can pay a little more if this means that this happens. It's not inherently bad, but what you have to be able to do is evaluate the spin-off results, and then was it worth it? Mm-hmm. The number one thing that really I think is kind of unfortunate about all of this, the tone that this election has taken, and it's not just this one, let's not fool ourselves, is that it alienates the regular people. It alienates the majority of people that speak respectfully to their fellow humans, that make a normal average income, let's say between, $40,000 and $110,000 a year-ish, to pick numbers out of it. All of these ordinary, average, respectable, neighborhood kind of folks are alienated, and all that are left duking it out in the trenches are the extreme supporters of different ideologies. So you've got the hardcore right-wingers slinging mud at the hardcore left-wingers, and everybody in the middle going, you guys fight it out, I've lost interest.
Yeah, that's very well put. We are ducking below the table of a food fight. That is absolutely true.
And I hope, that people understand, and I know that this program is coming at you on a Saturday morning, 48 hours away from a federal election. I really hope that people don't get disillusioned to the point of saying, I'm just not voting. I desperately hope that's not the case.
I'll tell you, I've seen a number of people saying that they're not going to vote. They're going to
spoil their ballot.
I
find that's really unfortunate.
And I would agree with you on that one, but people saying, I can't vote for any of these parties, but I need to let them know how I feel. Saw that on a number of different places.
I hear that a lot. Keep in mind that whoever achieves government doesn't give a rat's ass about spoiled ballots.
Nope.
They're just thankful that they've secured government. You can hear Jay Lynn, Nye, and Andrew Grose every weekday afternoon from 2 to 6, the afternoon news on 6:30 CHED. I will be back with you Monday morning from 9 to noon. We won't be talking politics because it's election day, right. So we can't. The attack ads will be done, and Edmontonians, Albertans, Canadians will be hopefully hitting up the polls en masse. Thanks for listening to the announcers. For more, you can, of course, follow all of us on Twitter and check out 630ched.com.